Have you ever wondered what God's will for your life was? Where you weren't really sure what God wanted you to do and you just wish that He'd tell you already? Well, in this video, I'm going to address one of the biggest mistakes that we make when it comes to the will of God, and I'm going to show you how you can know for sure if you're in His will. Hi, my name is David Cipriano. I'm a youth pastor who wants to teach the Bible to as many people as possible. Regardless of age, we've all had our questions about God's will. What does He want me to do? And how can I know that I have it right? And if we're not really sure what to do, then we may wonder why God hasn't revealed His will yet. And we may fear that we're living in disobedience if we don't have a clear path. But in this 5-minute sermon, I'm going to show you what many believers are getting wrong about God's will, causing one of the biggest misunderstandings of the Christian life. Now, when it comes to God's will, there's two different sides to it. On one hand, there's what we typically think of, which is the future plans of God. This includes making decisions, figuring out what to do, and knowing what lies ahead. But on the other hand, there's the will that God's already revealed, which are the things that God has previously told us, whether it's through His Word or His Spirit. And the mistake that many Christians make is that we spend so much time thinking and worrying about God's future plans, but we're ignoring what He's already commanded. We say that we would follow God's guiding if He told us what to do, but we're not obeying what He's already told us. And a person may be trying to figure out what God's planned for their future while not following God's plan for today. And this type of person may feel confused about why God hasn't revealed His future plans to them yet. But let's think about it from God's perspective. Because why would He reveal His will to someone who doesn't listen? And if you're not doing what He's already told you to do, then why would you do something that He hasn't told you to do yet? I think that disobedience is one of the biggest reasons why God doesn't give us His plans. Because the truth is that many Christians don't actually want to do God's will. We're just hoping that God is going to make our lives easier or give us some exciting news. But a person who really wants to know the will of God is going to follow what they do know. So what is it that God's commanded you to do, but you're not doing it yet? And is there a sin in your life that you haven't taken care of yet? Because unless you do what you know is right, then you're not living in His will. Now, for those who really are following God already, a common fear we'll have is that if we don't know God's plans, then we feel like we're outside of His will. Because if we don't know His will, then how can we do it? But if we're obeying what He's called us to do, and we're faithfully seeking Him, then we are in His will, regardless of whether or not we know the future. And a good example of this is the story of Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12, God told him to move, but He didn't tell him exactly where yet. He just said, "Unto a land that I will show thee." God had revealed part of the plan to him, but not everything. And this uncertainty could have made him feel like he wasn't in God's will, but because of his obedience, he actually was. Because even though he didn't know where the final destination was, he was obedient anyway. Sometimes we think that if we don't know God's future plans, then we must not be in His will. And this leaves us in a confusing and frustrating place because we feel like we're at a standstill, unable to follow. But obedience is not about knowing every single step of the journey, but rather following what we do know. Abraham was doing the will of God even though he didn't know all that God's plan entailed, and he was right where God wanted him to be in spite of not knowing the future. So here's how you can know whether or not you're following the will of God. If you're saved, if you're doing what He's commanded you to do, and if you're faithfully following Him, then you're in His will. You may not know the future, and you may feel confused about His plans, and maybe you don't have every answer that you wish you did, but you can be in God's will without knowing all that He has in store for you. Now, a lot of us will still wonder what God's plan for our future is, and if you'd like for me to make a video about that, then comment that down below. If this video was a help, then make sure to watch this previous video about how to have a stronger prayer life. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.